Tough conversations suck. We all know that. Well, what are ways that we can effectively hold some people accountable and engage in these tough conversations that can be effective and hopefully leave you, your team, and the person you're talking to in a better direction? Welcome to Shift Your Lens. My name is Raymond White, where we give bite-sized leadership tips and guide you to become an effective leader from the middle out. Now, tough conversations is one that nobody wants to have. Nobody wants to have tough conversations because that requires you to step into a space that is really uncomfortable. You might have to deal with somebody's perspective, somebody's lack of execution, someone's behavior, and those things are just really hard to have because you're talking about somebody's personality or just the way that they're executing. And typically, as I've done this myself, you avoid it. You don't even want to talk about it. You just hope that the problem sweeps under the rug and it goes away. But the issue with that is if you as a leader don't step in and address these conversations well, you can find that it becomes a behavior that it is permissible, and then people will then see that, oh, if it's okay for homeboy to do it, to not put in his time card or to fail to execute that particular tactic, then I can do it too. And it just erodes trust and erodes the culture. But on the other end, if you are so harsh in those tough conversations, if you don't have a clear plan and a way to kind of posture yourself effectively, then you can turn people off and you can create a space where it's really more toxic because people will fear how you communicate to them and will fear making a mistake and not approach or not progress and then maybe ultimately leave. Both options will allow team members to ultimately leave, lose retention, and nobody wants that. As somebody who's been on both sides of the spectrum, I have learned here are some particular tactics that have been beneficial for me in having these tough conversations, and hopefully it could be beneficial for you too. First thing and foremost, you got to be able to keep these conversations in a factual basis. We Emotions rise when we are in a season of tough times, of tension, of dialogue that is more or less getting at somebody's maybe personality, work ethic, things of that nature. And people really feel tied to that. I feel really tied to that. But as a leader giving this kind of conversation, you have to be able to be stated in facts and understand what are the specific things that are related to the situation itself that you could speak to. Not something that happened 4 years ago, not something that happened to, that you hearsay, see say, whatever, right? You have to define what facts are related to the issue that at hand and stick to that. Time, date, the situation, the outcome, what should be happening, what's actually happening. Those deep key details are necessary in the dialogue so you can stay focused and keep the person you're talking to staying focused on what we're talking about rather than bringing up some old stuff that had nothing to do with what's going on right now, right? The next thing that you could do is lead with curiosity. Now, this is a tough posture to stand in because sometimes when you're given a tough conversation, you want to be the one to enforce and you want to be the one to execute that conversation. But if you lean in with curiosity and ask some questions that help draw out what maybe their person's thought process in that space, it allows you the space to hopefully shift your lens in what could be happening, right? We all have perceived bias or perceived understanding of the situation based upon our own seat and what we see. But if we ask the question of like, hey, tell me more about the situation, or understanding like what challenges there may be experiencing, because it could be just a gap in understanding or a lesson that could be taught, or a space where you can say, oh, then we may not need to go down the route of corrective action or go down the route of reprimand because it was a misunderstanding and we could do better in our communication, or so on and so forth. But that curiosity posture allows you to kind of go in with open eyes and open perspective rather than trying to, as if you see everything as a nail, then, and if your only tool is a hammer, then you see everything as a nail, or whatever the story is, right? The last thing is, as you are walking through this conversation, focus on the process. Focus on what what should be happening from A to B or A to Z, whatever the steps that should be done, rather than talking about shifting the blame on what somebody could be doing or should be doing. If the process is You make the call, you document the work, you execute on the task, and then you follow up. And 3 of the 4 steps were missing. Then say, hey, this is what should have been happening during this process. And now that you know, and now that that's been cleared up, you can then take the next steps forward to execute. Because if you knew better, you do better. And now that we all know better, you now should do better. And that could be the next starting point moving forward to evaluate somebody's effectiveness, because you've cleared up the confusion and you reset expectations for the next step. So be able to focus on the facts, be able to lead in with curiosity, and then be able to understand what the process is and make it about the process. Now, what's great about this dialogue is there's more to it that has to be done, but this is just the starting points to get it going. What I've done is created a tough topics document that allows us the ability to walk through with particular 8 questions that you can navigate to have these tough conversations. And while you're having these tough conversations, be able to know what posture you can sit in and be in to lead effectively in this space. You can get that document and a 5-day email course for free by typing the link below. You can get that. You can be an effective leader in that space and have these more community connection centered conversations, and lead from a posture of empathy and grace than of harsh reprimand and authoritative space. If you like this series, if you want your leadership challenge answered through this format, please click the link in the show notes that has the survey where we get to know you and your leadership challenge better, and we can respond to it with some specific tactics and specific pathways to help you become effective in your leadership. As well as subscribe to the Leaders Lens newsletter, where we get these bite-sized and deep dives of leadership tactics to make you an effective leader from the middle out, and ultimately create an inclusive workplace where every identity belongs and thrives. I'll catch you all in the next episode. Peace.